Chapter 1. The Call and the Mirror Chosen One. You are not broken. What you are experiencing, this inexplicable compulsion towards silence, this visceral recoil from sharing what moves within you, is not social anxiety, introversion, or fear. It is something far more profound, something the collective consciousness has largely forgotten, the sacred art of psychic gestation. You feel it in your bones, don't you? That subtle warning system that activates when you're about to speak prematurely about the vision crystallizing in your soul's deepest chambers. That instinct is not paranoia. It is your unconscious screaming a truth that modern society has trained you to ignore. Not everything that is real needs to be revealed. In a world intoxicated by performance, where social media has turned human existence into a perpetual broadcast, you carry something ancient and countercultural. The knowledge that true power incubates in darkness. Carl Jung spent decades mapping this territory, understanding what the mystics and alchemists knew. Transformation is not a spectator sport. The butterfly does not narrate its metamorphosis from inside the chrysalis. The seed does not live stream its germination beneath the soil. And you, chosen one, are undergoing a reorganization of consciousness so fundamental that premature exposure would abort the very process heaven is orchestrating within you. This is why isolation feels both painful and necessary. You are caught between two psychological realities: the ego's desperate need for validation and the self's unwavering commitment to authentic emergence. The ego, that part of you constructed through social conditioning and external feedback, cannot comprehend why you must withdraw. It interprets silence as failure, hiddenness as irrelevance. But the self, Jung's term for the totality of your being, the divine blueprint encoded in your psyche before society began its sculpting, knows better. The self recognizes that what is forming within you would be contaminated by premature articulation, distorted by others' projections, diluted by the need to justify or explain. Between the 150th and 250th word of this revelation, I must pause to acknowledge something practical, something I mapped out precisely because I have walked this path and witnessed countless chosen ones stumble not from lack of vision, but from lack of practical integration tools. This is why I created The 3 Keys to a Prosperous Life, a trilogy of resources, ebook and audiobook, specifically designed for souls like yours who carry immense potential but struggle with the mechanics of manifestation without guilt, without self-betrayal, without energetic hemorrhaging. It is the practical manual for those who know they are meant for more, but keep sabotaging the very abundance they are trying to birth. The link is waiting in the pinned comment below, not as a distraction from this sacred teaching, but as the bridge between revelation and application. Now, let us return to the depths. The psychological architecture of what you are experiencing has specific contours that Jung identified through both clinical observation and his own harrowing journey into what he called the confrontation with the unconscious. After his break with Freud in 1913, Jung entered a period of such intense psychological disintegration that he questioned his own sanity. He withdrew from much of public life, descended into what we now recognize as active imagination, deliberate dialogue with the archetypal forces arising from his psyche. He did not broadcast this process. He did not seek validation or understanding from his peers, most of whom would have diagnosed him as psychotic. He protected the sacred work through strategic silence. What emerged from those hidden years was not merely theory, but a complete psychological cosmology. The discovery of archetypes, the collective unconscious, the individuation process, synchronicity, the shadow, the anima and animus. None of this would have survived had Jung subjected it to premature academic scrutiny or public consumption. The work needed darkness, needed privacy, needed the protection of hiddenness to reach maturity. This is your situation, precisely replicated in modern context. You are not mentally ill. You are individuating, and individuation always requires phases of withdrawal that appear pathological to those who have never attempted the journey. The shadow aspect of premature speech operates through a mechanism most chosen ones do not recognize until after they have been burned. When you speak too early about divine assignments, about visions, about the transformation occurring within you, you inadvertently invite psychological projection from your audience. Projection, in Jungian psychology, is the unconscious process by which individuals attribute their own unacknowledged qualities, desires, or fears onto others. The person who has not confronted their own mediocrity will experience your emerging excellence as an attack on their self-concept. They do not consciously decide to undermine you. Their shadow does it automatically, defensively, inevitably. This is why Joseph's brothers threw him into the pit. His dream was legitimate, archetypal content from the self, revealing his destiny. But Joseph's ego, still unintegrated, could not discern that some revelations are meant only for the dreamer and the divine. When he announced his vision of supremacy to those who had not done the inner work to celebrate another's elevation, he activated their shadow material. Their jealousy was not caused by his dream, it was revealed by it. The dream simply brought to surface what was already festering in their unconscious. Unacknowledged inadequacy, repressed ambition, disowned power. Joseph became the screen onto which they projected their self-hatred. Had Joseph understood what you are learning now, the principle of sacred restraint, his path would have been radically different. The vision would have unfolded without the detour through slavery and imprisonment. The brothers' shadow content would have had no convenient target. But Joseph's premature speech interrupted the natural, alchemical timing of destiny, forcing a longer, more painful route to the same destination. You are being spared this unnecessary suffering through the wisdom of silence. Consider the psychological mechanism more deeply. When you share a vision that is still in spiritual gestation, you create what Jung called psychic contagion, the energetic mixing of your sacred work with the unprocessed material of your audience. Their doubts become yours. Their limitations infect your imagination. Their fear contaminates your faith, not because you are weak, but because you are still in a vulnerable developmental phase where boundaries between self and other are permeable. Silence is not just strategic, it is protective, energetic hygiene. The modern chosen one faces a challenge Joseph never encountered, the weaponization of connectivity. Social media has created the illusion that every thought deserves an audience, that every insight must be immediately broadcasted, that hiddenness equals irrelevance. This is a demonic reversal of alchemical truth. The alchemists worked in sealed vessels precisely because exposure to air would corrupt the transformation process. Your psyche is that sealed vessel right now, and premature speech is the crack that lets corruption enter. You feel the tension between your calling and your current obscurity. This tension is not accidental, it is pedagogical. Jung called it holding the tension of opposites, the psychological skill that separates those who individuate from those who fragment. You must simultaneously know you are chosen while refusing the ego's demand to announce it. You must carry divine assignments while honoring the unconscious timeline for their revelation. This tension, when held without collapse into either extreme, becomes the very force that transmutes psychic lead into spiritual gold. The archetypal burden of differentiation. What distinguishes you from the masses is not superiority, but sensitivity to archetypal currents that most people never consciously register. You feel the tides of the collective unconscious, those deep, primordial patterns Jung discovered that govern human behavior across all cultures and epochs. While others sleepwalk through existence, Reacting to surface stimuli, you are tuned to the mythological frequencies beneath consensus reality. This is both gift and burden, because archetypal awareness comes with archetypal responsibility. The hero archetype, which many of you carry, is not about physical bravery or public acclaim. In Jungian psychology, the hero represents the individual willing to separate from collective consciousness, to challenge the status quo of the psyche, to venture into the unconscious and return with treasure, new consciousness that benefits not just the individual, but the collective. But every hero's journey begins with what Joseph Campbell, Jung's most famous student, called the refusal of the call. You are in that refusal phase, but it is not cowardice, it is discernment. The sage archetype operates differently, but with equal intensity. The sage must withdraw to accumulate wisdom before distribution. Every wisdom tradition recognizes this. The Buddha's years of meditation, Jesus' wilderness sojourn, Muhammad's cave revelations, Moses' desert exile. The pattern is consistent because it reflects a psychological law. Authentic wisdom cannot be crowdsourced or hurried. It crystallizes in solitude, in the friction between soul and silence. The transformer archetype, perhaps the most challenging, carries the burden of embodying change that threatens existing structures. You do not just talk about transformation. Your very presence catalyzes it in others, often triggering their shadow before their healing. This is why you have lost relationships seemingly without cause. Their unconscious recognized that proximity to you would demand growth they were not ready to attempt. Your current isolation is not punishment. It is the natural clearing of psychic space that occurs before major archetypal activation. But here is the shadow trap most chosen ones fall into, confusing archetypal awareness with ego inflation. Jung warned extensively about this danger. When the ego, the conscious sense of I, identifies too closely with archetypal content, inflation occurs. You begin to believe you are the hero rather than recognizing you are a human vessel temporarily carrying heroic energy. You confuse your personality with the transpersonal forces moving through you. This inflation is what caused Joseph's premature announcement. His ego merged with the archetypal content of his dream, and he could not distinguish between revelation meant for integration versus revelation meant for proclamation. The cure for inflation is not self-doubt or false humility. It is what Jung called the psychological attitude, the capacity to observe your own psyche with honest detachment. You acknowledge the archetypal energy without claiming ownership. You recognize the divine assignment without inflating your personal importance. This is extraordinarily difficult because the ego naturally wants to take credit for what the self accomplishes. Silence is the spiritual discipline that trains this discrimination. Chapter 2. The Shadow Work and Resistance. The resistance you feel toward your own calling is not weakness. It is the most honest part of your psyche attempting to protect you from premature manifestation. Jung discovered that the unconscious is not irrational. It operates according to a deeper logic that the conscious mind initially perceives as opposition. When you feel internal sabotage, when you procrastinate on divine assignments, when you numb yourself with distractions, you are not failing. You are experiencing the shadow's protective mechanism, signaling that integration has not yet completed. Let us be surgically precise about what shadow means in your context. The shadow is not evil. It is the repository of everything your ego has had to repress, deny, or disown to maintain its current self-concept. For chosen ones, the shadow often contains not just negative qualities like rage or selfishness, but positive capacities that were too threatening to acknowledge. Your power, your worthiness, your right to receive abundance without martyrdom, your permission to prioritize your calling over others' comfort. This is the reversal that torments you in the 3 a.m. hours when sleep will not come, and your mind replays every decision with merciless scrutiny. You think your shadow contains your darkness, but in truth your shadow contains your light. Disowned, feared, exiled because owning it would require dismantling the identity you have constructed around suffering, around being misunderstood, around noble struggle. Your ego has become attached to the narrative of the wounded healer, the misunderstood prophet, the rejected chosen one. But what if the next chapter requires you to be celebrated, resourced, and victorious? Can your current self-concept survive that plot twist? This is why you sabotage opportunities that align with your stated desires. The ego fears that success would destroy the personality it has spent decades constructing. You are not afraid of failure, chosen one. You are terrified of success, because success would prove that the story you have told yourself about why you are not yet thriving is a lie. Success would reveal that the obstacle was never external circumstances, never other people's limitations, never bad timing. The obstacle was the ego's attachment to a self-concept that requires continued struggle to maintain coherence. Jung called this the neurotic's resistance to cure. The neurosis, despite its pain, provides psychological benefits the patient is unwilling to surrender. The sympathy of others, the excuse for inaction, the identity as victim rather than creator. For the chosen one, the neurosis often manifests as spiritual bypassing disguised as humility. I am not ready. God has not released me. The timing is not right. These statements feel pious, but Jung would recognize them as shadow material, the ego defending against integration by cloaking fear in religious language. The guilt you feel about receiving abundance is perhaps the most insidious shadow contamination. Somewhere in your psychological formation, you internalize the belief that spirituality and prosperity are incompatible, that true devotion requires financial struggle, that comfort equals compromise. This belief is not biblical, not Jungian, not alchemical. It is a trauma-based distortion that has colonized your relationship with manifestation. The shadow has convinced you that suffering validates your calling, when in truth your calling is validated by alignment with the self, regardless of material outcome. Examine the psychological mechanism. When abundance approaches, you feel unworthy. This unworthiness is not humility. It is the ego protecting its familiar identity as the one who struggles. To receive easily would require acknowledging that you were never meant to earn love through suffering, that your value was inherent all along, that the years of hardship were not divine requirement, but human choice. This realization is more threatening to the ego than continued poverty, because it would invalidate the entire narrative that has defined your existence. The imposter syndrome that haunts many chosen ones is shadow projection in its purest form. You fear being exposed as a fraud, not because you lack genuine calling, but because you have not integrated the gap between who you have been and who you are becoming. The old self looks at the new assignment and declares, "That is not me." And the old self is correct. It is not the old self's assignment. It belongs to the emerging self, but because you still identify primarily with ego rather than self, the assignment feels fraudulent. Jung would invite you to ask, who is the you that feels like an imposter? It is the persona, the social mask constructed to gain acceptance in systems that were never designed to accommodate your full essence. The persona is necessarily incomplete, a curated presentation of acceptable qualities. When you receive opportunities that require your full self rather than your edited persona, of course you feel fraudulent. You are being invited to operate from a level of authenticity the persona was built to conceal. The fear of your own power is the deepest shadow material most chosen ones will confront. You have seen what happens when power corrupts. You have witnessed narcissists weaponize influence, leaders abuse authority, gifted people become monsters. So your unconscious made a preemptive decision, better to remain powerless than risk becoming what you despise. But this is a false binary. Power itself is neutral. It amplifies whatever consciousness wields it. The solution is not to refuse power, but to purify consciousness before power arrives. This is what the silence is accomplishing. Every day you resist the urge to announce, to explain, to justify your process. You are strengthening the psychological musculature required to hold power without corruption. You are training the ego to serve the self rather than exploit it. You are integrating shadow material so that when influence arrives, it will not activate unconscious complexes that turn you into what you once fled. The resistance to your calling often manifests as rational-sounding objections. I need more training, I lack resources, I do not have the right connections. Jung would recognize these as projections of internal fragmentation onto external circumstances. The real issue is not that you lack external tools, but that you have not yet achieved internal integration. The ego is still battling the self for dominance, and until that civil war resolves, external action will be counterproductive. Consider the psychological truth beneath your resistance. You are not resisting the calling itself. You are resisting the death of who you have been. Every authentic calling requires the sacrifice of an old identity. The caterpillar must dissolve into genetic soup before the butterfly can emerge. You are in the soup phase, and it feels like annihilation because from the ego's perspective, it is annihilation. But the self knows this death is necessary, temporary, and ultimately redemptive. The shadow also contains your repressed rage at how long this process has taken. You are angry at God for the delays, furious at yourself for the detours, resentful of others who seem to manifest effortlessly what you have struggled years to birth. This rage is legitimate, but it must be consciously acknowledged rather than unconsciously acted out through self-sabotage. When you numb with scrolling, procrastinate on assignments, or pick fights with supporters, you are not being lazy. You are expressing unconscious rage through passive-aggressive self-destruction. Jung discovered that what we do not make conscious, we live out as fate. Your unacknowledged rage at the journey's difficulty becomes the very resistance that extends the journey. The anger you will not feel directly gets redirected into behaviors that create more reasons to be angry. This is the shadow's cruel efficiency. It uses your own repressed emotion as fuel to generate more of the same emotion. The cycle only breaks when you consciously retrieve the shadow material, feel the rage without judgment, and allow it to transform through conscious integration. The alchemy of self-sabotage, what you have diagnosed as self-sabotage, Jung would recognize as the unconscious attempting communication through the only language the conscious mind has forced it to speak: symptoms. Every missed opportunity, every inexplicable hesitation, every pattern of almost success but not quite, is the psyche signaling that integration is incomplete. The unconscious is not your enemy. It is your wisest counselor refusing to let you build on a flawed foundation. Think of it this way: a builder who discovers the ground is not yet stable enough for the planned structure does not proceed with construction. To do so would be to guarantee eventual collapse. Your unconscious is that builder, and it keeps sabotaging your efforts not to punish you, but to prevent catastrophic failure that would result from premature building. The delays you resent are actually protective postponements, giving the psyche time to achieve the integration necessary to sustain what you are trying to manifest. The self-sabotage often intensifies right before breakthrough because the ego recognizes that breakthrough will require its demotion. The ego has been running the show, making decisions, interpreting reality through its limited lens. But as the self prepares to assume its rightful role as the psyche's organizing center, the ego panics and escalates its defensive maneuvers. This is why your worst self-destructive episodes often occur when you are closest to transformation. It is the ego's last stand before integration forces it into service rather than sovereignty. But here is the paradox that will liberate you. You cannot force integration. The very attempt to fix your self-sabotage through willpower often strengthens it. Because willpower is an ego function, and the problem is ego inflation. The solution is not more effort but deeper surrender, not passive resignation, but active trust in the unconscious process. Jung called this circumambulation, the circular approach to the self rather than direct assault. You do not conquer self-sabotage. You integrate the shadow material fueling it, and the sabotage dissolves naturally. The guilt about past failures is another shadow trap. You believe that if you had been more disciplined, more faithful, more strategic, you would already be walking in your calling. But Jung would ask, what if those failures were necessary initiations, each one stripping away a layer of false self that had to die before authentic self could emerge? What if the detours were not deviations from the path, but essential components of it? What if God was not testing your endurance, but refining your essence? Reframe your history through the lens of alchemical transformation rather than moral judgment. The alchemists understood that gold is not created through linear process, but through cyclical refinement, repeated dissolution and coagulation, each cycle removing more impurity until only essence remains. Your failures were not evidence of unworthiness, but necessary dissolutions, breaking down ego structures that would have limited what the self is preparing to accomplish through you. The fear of repeating past mistakes is the ego's attempt to maintain control through hypervigilance. But this hypervigilance is itself a form of resistance because it keeps you focused on the past rather than present to the emergent moment. Jung discovered that the unconscious communicates through the present, through dreams, synchronicities, bodily sensations, intuitive knowing. But if your attention is constantly scanning for threats based on historical data, you cannot receive the novel guidance the present moment offers. This is where the practice of active imagination becomes crucial. Active imagination is Jung's method for dialoguing with the unconscious without the ego's interference. It requires entering a meditative state where you allow images, feelings, or inner voices to arise spontaneously, then engaging them as autonomous entities rather than dismissing them as just imagination. Through this practice, you discover that your resistance has intelligence, that your self-sabotage has legitimate concerns, that your shadow wants integration, not exile. When you practice active imagination with your resistance, you might discover it is protecting you from exploitation, from narcissistic inflation, from moving faster than your nervous system can integrate. The resistance is not the problem. Treating it as an enemy rather than an ally is the problem. Once you understand what the resistance is protecting, you can address the legitimate concern, and the resistance naturally softens. This is integration, not destroying parts of yourself, but giving all parts a seat at the table and facilitating dialogue until consensus emerges. Chapter 3. Synchronicities and the language of the universe. The repeating numbers you keep seeing, 11, 11, 3, 33, 4, 44, are not random neural misfires or confirmation bias. They are what Jung called synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that reveal the deeper order underlying apparent chaos. Jung discovered that when the psyche is undergoing significant transformation, the boundary between inner and outer reality becomes permeable, and the unconscious begins to manifest symbolically in external events. These number sequences are the universe's way of confirming you are on the right path, even when everything feels uncertain. But the truth about these symbols is even more disturbing than simple confirmation. They are evidence that your consciousness is beginning to operate at a frequency most humans never access, the level where mind and matter interpenetrate, where thought and thing are not separate categories, but different expressions of the same underlying psychic reality. Jung called this the psychoid realm, where the distinction between psychological and physical breaks down. Your repeated exposure to synchronistic numbers means you are developing sensitivity to this realm, which is both gift and responsibility. Synchronicity operates according to the principle of a causal connection. Events are related not through cause and effect, but through meaning. The number sequence did not cause anything in your life, and your life did not cause the number to appear. Rather, both are manifestations of an underlying archetypal pattern seeking expression. You are seeing the numbers because you are living the pattern they symbolize. Transition, awakening, alignment with higher purpose. The numbers are not predictive. They are descriptive of an ongoing psychic process. Most people dismiss synchronicity as coincidence because acknowledging it would require revising their entire worldview. To accept that the universe is responsive to consciousness, that meaning can manifest without mechanical causation, that you are participating in a larger pattern rather than randomly bouncing through a meaningless void. This is psychologically threatening to the materialist paradigm most have been conditioned to accept. But you, chosen one, cannot afford such denial. Your calling requires operating in the synchronistic field with fluency. The relationships that keep manifesting in your life follow synchronistic patterns as well. Notice how certain people appear precisely when you need a specific lesson, then disappear once that lesson completes. Notice how conflicts arise that mirror your internal struggles. Notice how supporters emerge when you have finally decided to proceed without support. These are not accidents. Jung would say these people are being constellated by your psyche, drawn into your field by the archetypal energies you are activating through your individuation process. This is why you cannot force relationships or outcomes. When you try to manipulate connection through strategy or performance, you exit the synchronistic flow and enter the mechanical realm of cause-effect, which operates at a much lower order of efficiency. Synchronicity requires what Jung called the symbolic attitude, the capacity to read life as a living dream where every person and event carries multiple layers of meaning beyond their surface appearance. The dreams you have been having are particularly significant right now. Jung discovered that during major life transitions, the unconscious increases dream activity to provide guidance the conscious mind cannot access. But most chosen ones make the mistake of trying to interpret dreams literally rather than symbolically. The person who appears in your dream